A little bit of a juxtaposition from what we saw this morning in terms of, we saw the bike entrepreneurs up here talking about after the boom. This is going to be about accelerating. If that one was a little bit pessimistic, I think this one's going to be much more optimistic and talking about where we take micromobility from here in Europe. So with that, we'll actually start with you, Maria. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. I didn't know we were supposed to be optimistic today. So
Yes,
I need
please.
to rethink what I'm going to say. No, just joking. So my name is Tsavachidis. So I'm the CEO of EIT Urban Mobility. EIT is the European Institute for Technology. We're a European innovation community helping companies to innovate in sustainable mobility, but also helping cities to work with innovators.
Great. Yann?
Thank you, James. Hello, Maria. Hello, everyone. Yann Marteil from Schepers. I'm the founder of that VC fund, impact fund, dedicated to decarbonization of transportation. Micromobility is one of the main topics that we're trying to cover. And I'm in that industry for 12 years, 13 years maybe. Happy to be in Amsterdam again.
Tanguy Goretti from Cowboy. I'm the CTO of the company. We launched Cowboy 7 years ago in Belgium. We now sell everywhere in Europe, especially in Amsterdam. Quite happy to be back in this city. And so the idea is that we design, produce, sell and service our own bikes. And we are what we call a D2C brand in the bike industry. Right?
I'm Gemma Schepers. I work for the city of Amsterdam as a project manager for the innovation team, and we're connecting the digital and physical public space. I did a lot of work on data standards, therefore I'm also in working groups in the European playing field, and also working together with data standards organizations like Open Mobility Foundation and Mobility Data. So we really try to build the data standard ecosystem.
Great. Okay. So I think we have a broad spectrum here, not sort of like, again, some of the other panels where everyone's in a specific place. We've got capital, we've got some policy, we've got some entrepreneurship and actual vehicle manufacturing. Gemma, let's start with you. So one of the more maybe interesting stats is traffic deaths are on the rise in Amsterdam since the pandemic. That's something that we've seen in the United States as well.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the culprit of that? I think so many people look to Amsterdam, look to the Netherlands as the safest place to ride. We actually opened with a graph on that.
Mm-hmm.
But why is traffic violence increasing, do you think?
I think there's a few aspects. So, for example, after the pandemic, people don't go back to the public space anymore. And I think if we see to public transport anymore, and what we see in Amsterdam, so we have the city is growing a lot, and we have not so much public space in the city of Amsterdam, but we see an increase of all kinds of different vehicles. It means that the city is getting really busy, and we have more people in the city of Amsterdam. So you get more accidents there, and I think it has to do a lot with road safety. I think that's an important problem that we need to work on for the next few years, also in the Netherlands and in Amsterdam.
Yeah. On that point, a second follow up on that. So the city has come out with a study that says that actually they believe that the figures show that there's 4 times the number of people that are injured in traffic accidents than previously thought.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really interesting data point. Why is that? Why is it people aren't reporting when they're in collisions because it's maybe less insurance or they're embarrassed? I'm just curious why the numbers are so far off.
Well, so every accident that's being caused in a city, it's only being reported when it's a big injury where you go to call the police or call an ambulance. Then it's going to put in a database. But if I'm on my bike and I just fell or just break my ankle or my wrist, probably I'm not going to report it, and it's not going to be in a database for accidents that had been taking place on the roads. So with some extra studies, the assumption is that it's even more accidents on the roads than being reported in the official database. So we collect more data.
Yeah.
And I think that is a concerning issue. So we really need to make some more policy as cities, and also together with the micromobility companies to make sure that how we can make sure that in the future we get less accidents.
Yeah, it's something we deal with in the U.S. as well. It's the idea that I often hear, and I think as all of us in the community, I think we have to educate people as much as possible. I hear often, oh, I was embarrassed. I was hit and I didn't know what to do. And of course, like when you crash your car, you might be embarrassed, but you're definitely going to report it, right? And I think that's something that we've got to tell people, hey, stop, call the police, report these things. It's important because that helps us build road safety if we have data that shows that there's issues.
That's why you need the crash detection system of Cowboy. I mean, every time you jump on a bike, on a Cowboy bike, we'll detect if there is a crash. And so we know, because we also compare our data to bike insurance company, that the delta is actually like 10 times more based on what we see. So actual crashes and what the insurance company see. And the nice thing is when you do that, you can then detect if it's a minor accident or like a major one, if you have to fix the bike or not. And on top of that, you can use that data to then warn the other customers and the other riders that this is a dangerous hotspot for bikes. And that's what we're also trying to do at Cowboy. But I think it's interesting that you're building that database, and for sure we can collaborate together on that point.
I think if you have the sensors on your light vehicles, and that can also measure accidents, I think that could be very valuable in the future to collect that data. Yeah.
Tanguy, how do you use that data today? Are you asking the customer, hey, were you involved in a collision, much like you might have on the watch where it says, hey, I think you've fallen? Are you doing any sort of that detection communication, or do you just have that in your database that says, hey, a lot of people are getting in these collisions and not reporting it?
No, so what we do is we do sensor fusion. So we have 10 different sensors in the bike: speed sensor, torque sensor, the Bluetooth antenna, the GPS. We use all of that to make sure that there was someone on the bike when the bike crashed. And then at that point, the bike will start blinking to make sure that it's visible on the road if you are actually crashed. And then you have 60 seconds to answer the alert on your phone. And if you don't do it, then your loved one will receive a text and then a call if you don't reply, and then you'll be able to follow the bike and the location of the bike on the map and provide assistance. Sometimes you don't have to do anything because it was just like a small crash. Sometimes you can save someone because it was the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, and that person could get assistance because of the crash detection system. But that's just being reactive. And I mean, we're gonna talk about that a lot, I'm sure, in the panel. But we are trying to be more and more proactive. So how can we use those data to make sure that the city is safer for everyone? And so we do that today thanks to the crash hotspots detection system and the predictive alert that we have in the application. But sometimes when you just have a dangerous crossroad, the only thing you can do is fix that crossroad. And for instance, you can have a protected bicycle lane. Technology can't fix that. At some point we need the city to jump in, and we've done that with a few cities like Paris or London. We had a few discussions, but never in Amsterdam, so maybe today is not yet. And I think we're gonna do that more in the future, because at the end of the day, you need bicycle lane to be safe on.
Of course. And now I hear you, and the story you tell about collaboration between, of course, what you're doing and your riders and the government. I've also read you online, over the last couple of years, and I've seen a frustrated founder at times with European regulations and with maybe the stifling nature of governments in Europe and how that's not helping your business, hurting your business. Maybe that's why cars continue to proliferate so well in Europe. Maria, if I can bring you in though, how can you help folks like Tanguy who are frustrated, that are increasingly dealing with regulation, maybe overregulation on their businesses, which can suffocate them before they can even bloom?
Okay, so first off, to clarify, so we are, because you introduced us like we were policy, so we are about innovation, actually an ecosystem. You might have seen our booth. So we work with regulators and innovators, and this is where I think the magic intersection lies, in the collaboration. So yes, regulation has hurt the industry. It has crowded out some players, but also regulation can help actually the industry to give more, let's say, predictability, more certainty. But for this to be conducive to the industry, it needs to be done together. So, I very much liked your conversation, actually, because this is what needs to happen more. So it is a very thin line between regulating, not enough and too late. We saw what happened, with the cluttering of the scooters in the very early stages of the shared mobility in cities, and that hasn't helped the branding, I think, of e-scooters. So how to avoid that, but not overcorrecting like it's happened now, banning scooters in Paris and so on. So to do that, we need innovation to happen together, because there are technologies, for instance, parking. So to make sure the shared vehicles are parked in the right place and so on. The technologies have emerged now that could actually avoid the problems that cities are facing. But, for this to have happened, we would have needed the dialogue between the startups, the companies that are developing those technologies, and the cities that have the problems. So it's all about really collaborating at the right time and really across the whole value chain, and the startups, the regulators, the cities. And I think what the micromobility industry makes itself a bit too small. So we need to take it to the more macro level. So the role it's playing in the cities to really transform mobility there. And this is what the cities need. So actually the goals are converging, but what's not yet happening enough is this collaboration on, okay, how do we change the system overall? What are the big problems, the big, let's say, barriers to bigger adoption of micromobility that we need to address together?
Yann, let's bring you in. So I guess just point blank, is the space fun? Is it investable based on what you've seen over the last 5 or 6 years in Europe? And again, maybe let's do a parallel. So, for instance, coming from the U.S., a lot of people will say the European AI space is not investable. Move to the U.S. There's too much regulation coming on. The nascent state of the industry is one where you're just going to burn your capital. Do you think that's the case in micromobility? And if not, what are the green shoots that we can point to that say the space is investable and the space is going well?
It's not a super easy market, but still we consider there is room for investment and success. And I hope we'll be able to announce some in the coming weeks, by the way. What I see is there is a shift in the paradigm in the last 2 years. 10 years ago, we had the arrival of players coming, most of them from the US, Uber and Co., and launching innovation, a little bit like Cowboys, not sure, but in their style. Not taking much care of regulation. Somehow it was interesting and useful, but it was questioning also the capacity of the cities and the authorities to adapt to new players. But also for VCs, what we saw is that it's not most of the time long-lasting business models. So a lot of players disappeared. And not because of regulation, because it's just impossible long time to make money. And I think that's phase one was interesting and positive because it's creating awareness that there is some tools who are interesting and bikes is part of that. Now we are in the second phase, which is a more mature one, more careful maybe, where you have business model who are really developing. And I see twofold. One is B2B2C. So going through employer willing to offer to employees a new solution, and there is many different type of business model. And second one is on innovating technology, embark, exactly like Tanguy was saying, embark in the products to make them more recyclable, more connected, more easy to repair, more easy to share, etc. And 10 years ago, it was not probably available or mature enough. Now it is. So And this is a long-term trend, I think, will be very interesting for VCs, particularly impact funds, who really care a lot on the side effects of the technology and of the products.
Would you say in the next 5 years, you'll see more investment into the micromobility space than the last 5 years?
Super difficult to say, but less than 10 years ago, for sure.
Sure.
In the last 2 years, it was super limited. So I see some appetite for investors for that, and deep appetite is coming also from a corporate VC. Some coming from bank or insurance, understanding that the valuation now is a little bit like on the leasing car, on the leasing bikes, on a new type of product. So I see there will be some opportunities there.
Okay.
Maybe, so to add
Yes.
what Yann just said, so I think the investments will go in, we'll have to go in two directions. So first, we need more investment in the infrastructure to actually, make the demand happen, because some user groups will not get into cycling if we don't provide the secure infrastructure to cycle. So, and this investment will have to come from the public side. So the cities will have to invest, the national governments, the EU. So invest more in micromobility infrastructure. And then, of course, the innovation side and the really the supply chain for instance, producing bicycles. We talked about it. So what is missing? And the EU is interested in supporting its industry, and they have done so with automotive. There is a big potential in the micromobility industry for Europe, but for that, we need the funds and the capital to go into supporting, for instance, manufacturing of, and you mentioned, so the frame manufacturing, automation of manufacturing in Europe. Batteries, we're also on it already, manufacturing batteries at a cost competitive price in Europe. So these are the two things where investment and also public investment needs to go into.
Okay. Tanguy, let's go to you directly on innovation. So, how many people in the audience have ridden in a Waymo car? 1, 2. Anyone here has ridden?
I will ride in one.
No. 4. You will.
Yeah.
Okay, that's exciting. You have, Yann?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So I think if you haven't ridden in one, it's hard to describe. Much like maybe if it would be like maybe we had an iPhone and you had never used an iPhone. I'd say it's almost that crazy when you get in one and you feel it and you're like, wow. So that vehicle in a constrained area drives itself completely, like in the most amazing way you would ever imagine. When is that coming to bikes? Why do I have to pedal my bike? Like, that's a much smaller thing. I mean, we just saw GPT-4o come out, right? That vision on GPT-4o, very clearly can see the entire world. It literally has the eyes of the neural network behind it. Like, when does the Cowboy vehicle ride itself, summon itself, and what are the limitations?
Okay, that's a good question. I think the real question is, do we really want that as a society? I mean, for sure we want that for cars because it's a 1-ton vehicle. It is dangerous. You can have accidents. You could kill someone. And we saw that autonomous vehicles have like better stats when you look at the ratio of accidents. But for a bike, and actually a Cowboy bike, we have a lot of data. We know that our customers and our riders, they use the bike on average 8 times per week. They're going to be 20 minutes on those bikes every day. We have the Apple Watch app, so we know that the BPM will be roughly 110, 120 when they are on the bike. And so basically our riders, our customers, they get like a free, easy workout, like zone 2 workout. I'm sure you know that as a fit guy like you. And we know that those 20 minutes of exercise every day, it's actually impacting your VO2 max, and it's actually the best proxy for longevity. And so what we see in every city like Copenhagen or Amsterdam is that the bike and being active on the bike has a huge impact on the health of those cyclists. And I think that's something we don't talk about enough, because investing in biking infrastructure, it's actually a super cheap way to solve like many issues, like many health issues for your citizens. And at Cowboy, like, I'm a big advocate of that, and we are developing many functionalities to really push our customers to use the bike more. And we have a lot of gamification, and it was a bit like a gimmick when we started, but we really see that we can increase the usage of the bike by making it more fun. And I believe it's going to be a big topic in the future. And that's why at Cowboy we are so bullish on that, because we believe we can basically make your life better when you ride a Cowboy.
So I think if I'm paraphrasing, you're saying, hey, the Cowboy bike will always be about the fun, the riding aspect of it, the health aspect of it.
Yeah.
You're telling me my glasses will not control my drivetrain and control the vehicle. Really?
I really want you to be active on the bike. Stay,
I mean, like the data says, like, this is I got this graph here. It's European car ownership, right? And every single country, the graph only goes in one direction, right? There's, even in Europe, America, the only one direction, every developing country in the world, only one direction. People like that you can go from one place to another and you don't have to use your own power. Why wouldn't that come to the bike? Why wouldn't, why would that not be just incredible? I see people riding out there today. I mean, in the US too, like people are on their phones. They're like not looking. We know there's tons of accidents. Why wouldn't you say, hey, we control it.
Yeah.
You enjoy the ride.
Maybe it will not be for everyone, but at least at Cowboy, that's what we believe. And again, that's what we see in the usage of a bike. Like our riders or customers, they are super happy to be on the bike, and we want to keep that. As soon as you like automate fully the bike, you lose that fun. Like, it's fun to go between the car, it's fun to accelerate, it's fun to feel like the exercise and the dopamine after the small workout that you did on a Cowboy bike. So again, for sure you will have people sitting in the car all day long, but that's not our customers, at least today. And again, I believe if we want to have a positive impact on cities and the society, that's not something that we want. Autonomous bike, that's not something that makes sense, at least to me.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone disagree with that?
Well, James, I think it's very apparent. So you have 4 Europeans sitting here who are very much amused by the idea of having autonomous bikes. Yeah. So what problem would that be solving?
Safety, security.
But who would you transport on the bike?
A human.
A human. But then it wouldn't. Yeah. But you already. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't see that it's solving anyone's problem. Actually, it's taking away the benefit of riding.
Do you feel the same way about cars?
No, because in cars, it is actually, where's the use case for autonomous cars in Europe? So I see the beneficial use case for society in public transport. So complementing public transport, where today we don't have a viable business model in suburban areas, for instance, where you cannot cover, at a cost competitive price, because you have the driver element, you need the vehicle coverage, etc. So there's a really good business model for autonomous driving there, shuttles, etc. I don't see autonomous as the great solution to just replace, all cars in cities with autonomous for comfort. So here it's really about solving problems that we have in cities to provide accessible, affordable mobility for everyone. And so, bikes are great because they are actually addressing all of those problems.
I think bikes are great too, but the data says that people are driving cars and continuing to drive cars. So what is innovation that's going to lead for this trend to stop?
But your chart does not focus on cities. This is global.
Yes. If you look the country.
In cities only, the number of mileage and the time you spent has been decreasing for the last 5 years in most of the cities. And I think that on your question is there is a balance to find between what we can with innovation, what we want, and what we call responsibility. And as investor, it's something very important because we consider that it's not because it's innovative that we want to promote it. So we need to decide what is the most important at the moment. At Shift for Good, we consider that what is at stake now is the planet. So we have everybody, individually and collectively, we have a huge responsibility to make sure that human will be able to survive on the long run, which is not obvious. So our responsibility is to invest, to support, to innovate on things which are making a change. We consider that something that is good for health of the people, something that is positive for the planet, producing, recycling, etc., something that create a capacity of people to live together, it's much more important than other innovation can be good, like full autonomous things, which can be considered as interesting, but kind of toys, which are not as important for the moment. I'm not talking about trucks. I'm not talking about long-haul vehicle, etc., where autonomy can be interesting because it's a lot of energy, a lot of emission, a lot of risk, etc. But in the city, where most of the people are concentrating, we think that soft mobility, which is another word for micromobility, it's an approach where bikes have definitively a main place, a main role to play.
Right.
And we want to support that. So it's a question of choice.
What's a good example there, Yann? What's a successful example of capital that's gone into that structure? And we've seen, the types of return on invested capital that would allow more money to come in.
For micromobility, you mean?
Or just anything under the paradigm you just shared. Let's get more specific with companies, investments.
Two examples. One is on a retrofit. When you are retrofitting small trucks, for instance, we have some example now in Europe. So changing the terminal engine into electric engine, we think it's good. There is a massive market that's ongoing, massive investment, and very positive. Second one is on recycling batteries, recycling tires, recycling etc. Because in Europe, we have a lack of raw materials, but we have the traffic. So we've been importing, but now, for instance, we can calculate that in terms of lithium, in 5 years from now, between what we extract and what we can recycle, we will be autonomous in lithium. That's a different paradigm. So it's good to invest in that type of recycling company.
Tanguy, to go to you, can you talk a little bit about where you have seen challenges with regulation, where you think it's been too burdensome, and what you'd want to see from different European governments to alleviate that, to allow for companies like yours to thrive?
Yeah, I think we've been lucky in Europe to have one regulation for e-bikes. When we started, it was super clear what we had to achieve in terms of requirements. Even compared to the US, in the US, you had different regulation in different states. Maybe it changed recently, but at the time it was quite challenging. So on that point, I think the EU did an amazing job. The thing that we could improve, and we've discussed that, is how can we bring back some of the industry that we have basically killed in Europe, like the heavy industry. Every time I go to Taiwan or Asia, it's insane how far we are from there. And even when we talk in Europe about investing in battery factory, and when we're talking billions, like in Asia, they have like 20 times, 30 times those projects already in the pipeline. And so I think we don't realize how important it is to bring back some of those activities in Europe, like the battery, for instance, at Cowboy. We know if the battery manufacturer in Denmark, it was quite complicated for us to do it, but we've managed to do that after 2 years. But if you look at the frame suppliers or the motor suppliers, all of that is still like very much based in Asia. And so I think we need the EU, a little bit like we did for the battery, to make it easy for those factories to get some money, at least to get started, to have loan, like we did, for instance, for Vercor in France, for the battery manufacturer. I think that like a 1 billion loan from the EU. And that's even more important if you look at the tension that we now have in the world. Like what happened in Ukraine could also happen in Taiwan. Like I was in Taiwan 2 weeks ago, and I was explaining when I was there, you had an exercise of the Chinese to invade the island, like a full-scale exercise. And it's just an exercise, but at the same time in Taiwan, you have the entire microcontroller industry. And so you've been talking about AI and like the kind of industry we have to invest in. I think people don't realize that if we lose Taiwan, the NVIDIA GPU, they use the microcontroller from Taiwan. So even the AI startups, they will not be able to build their own data center at some point because we will not be in control of the supply. And I think that's very key to realize that and to have some key initiatives in Europe to bring back some of those activities and making sure that we can be independent if needed.
Okay, so investment in the onshoring and the nearshoring of so much of the supply chain that's now, relied upon, and of course it's all sort of, as you mentioned, geopolitical issues with that, and the fabric of a lot of globalization is potentially. And I could see you guys leading there. Let's also talk about in terms of after safety. We've talked a bit about safety, but theft is a big issue with micromobility. How can regulation help with theft? And maybe I'll give an example, right? You steal a car in the U.S. that's called grand theft auto. It's paired with a felony. You steal a bike, it's kind of a slap on the wrist. Hey, sorry. And yet at the same time, we want to take it so seriously, this idea of what a bike, what your e-bike is versus what a car is to someone. Do you think the government's doing enough to help you there? That theft is taken very seriously at the micro level with your vehicles, or do you think the onus is put on you to solve that? And just curious for everyone here, how theft is handled, and if there's more regulation needed.
At Cowboy, it really depends on the country, and not even the country, like sometimes the city. As soon as they know all bikes, for instance, when you have a stolen Cowboy, you will be able to track the bike. You have a GPS inside the bike. But the issue is you need the cops to come with you and to help you recover the bike. So that's the difficult part because sometimes they just don't have the time. Now what we can see is that after a few years, like in Paris, for instance, they will be keen to come with us to recover the bike because they know that most of the time they will recover like not only the Cowboy, but also all the stolen bikes in that warehouse. So I think it's getting better because we have Cowboy and like other players, we have educated the market on what's a tracked and what's a connected e-bike and what you can do with it. Now, from a regulation point of view, to be honest, I don't have a clear idea because it's super difficult to resell a car, but it's super easy to resell a bike. And so you would need a system to identify the bike like you have in France, for instance. But even that, from what we see, it's not preventing theft or it's not reducing the difficulty to resell the bike. So I think manufacturers have to build that in. Like for instance, at Cowboy, if you sell a Cowboy, you will not be able to turn on the bike. So even if you sell it to someone, then the bike is useless. It's just a heavy electric bike without a battery or without a motor. And maybe EU can help on that point and can like give some framework. But I don't have a clear idea on that.
Anyone else on that, on the topic of theft and the role of regulation, or is it all innovation? Is it all on Cowboy to figure out how to make it work, make it trackable, or does the government bear a responsibility?
At Schepers, we invested in a UK and a Dutch company named LAKA, L-A-K-A.
Yeah, they're here. Yeah,
somewhere here.
Yeah.
Doing insurance for e-bikes. And theft is really the first reason for people to not buy e-bikes. So if you have a good insurance, as the case with LAKA, I mean, it's a reason to do it. But also you need to have a connected bike, because when you have a connected bike, even though it's not preventing of everything, most of the bikes, I mean, a vast majority of the bikes who are stolen are not connected. So the proportion of not connected is way more important than the other, because thieves are clever and they know they can make the difference. What's important, I think, is when I was in Paris and I did the VLIP system, we're creating a system that is implementing now that you can block the bike at distance. So the bike is definitely useless. So I think that's possible, and that's the type of technology. And the more you have, the cheaper it is. But also collaboration with cities is very important, because when you have great areas with cameras, etc., that makes the people more trustful, and then they use the bikes more.
Yeah, but it's not only about regulation or smart locks. I mean, these are important elements, but also, I mean, the investment that cities do on, lockage rooms. You have in Amsterdam this huge parking lot for city bikes. So there are investments being made by many cities, and I think it all has to go together, right? So investment in infrastructure from the public side, innovation from the companies and the industry side. Then we need to probably do something on data. I also don't have it clear, what type of, standardized data exchange we need there. But so it all has to come together to remove the friction from the system.
Final question, and I guess let's try to be as rapid fire as we can. Let's say, again, we're thinking about the future a little bit. In 10 years, in Europe, will you have more people with, let's think about the next generation. So let's maybe our grandchildren or children, if we don't have children yet. Will our children have an e-bike license, a driver's license, or both? Right now they have a driver's license, right, but not an e-bike license. I'm curious if you think that will flip, or they'll have both, or neither, maybe. Each of you.
I think it really depends on how the technology of the vehicles will develop, and if the technology is getting better, and maybe also the speed, how fast the vehicles can drive. I think it really depends on if you need to have a license or not. And also I think it comes on road safety, if the vehicles become more safer with all the technology. But I think you need to have a license because things get more complicated. But maybe even if technology can swap it around, it gets easier to ride on vehicles. And I think it's also come with regulation and changing the whole infrastructure. That's the trend we are seeing. We see like less cars in the big cities. We see a growth of more light electric vehicles. We see more technology and sensors. So we really see the roads changing, and we try to adapt the infrastructure, not going as fast as we want. But I think in 10 years, we see complete different cities and how people using the streets in the cities.
Sorry, just to get more direct. E-bike licenses, driver's licenses, both. Tanguy.
None. I think if you have an e-bike license, then it means that you restrict the accessibility of e-bikes to everyone. To be safe, you need a big number of users. For instance, what we saw in Sydney in Australia when they tried to force the helmets on cyclists, what happened is that you decrease the number of cyclists on the road because you make it more difficult. And so you increase the number of accidents because cyclists are less visible.
Yes.
And so you have the other effect. So my view is that we should make cycling as accessible as we can. And on the driver license, I think in 20, 40 years, we'll have the autonomous car. So I guess you don't need a driver license anymore if you live in a city. If you live in a city...
So no driver's license, no e-bike license.
Hopefully.
Yann, you got to put the money down on the table. Will e-bikes be more regulated or no licenses?
No, I think both. And I don't see a major shift. I think that, and I hope we'll see a change in the way that the products are built, designed, used, more electric, more sustainable, more recycled, etc. But in terms of usage, I think as long as people continue to go home to office, not every day, but quite often, they will either need a car when they live in the countryside or a bike, I hope in cities, etc. So I don't see major reason where there will be a major shift. I have 3 kids, and out of my 3 kids, teenager, young adults, all of them, they want to have their driving license. Not because we're living in Paris, because we have a house in the countryside in Brittany, where when you don't have a car, I mean, you're lost. So I think people are not single usage people. There are different type of will and they want to combine both.
Okay.
So in Paris, they use a bike. In Brittany, they're gonna drive.
Yeah, you want a very short answer, right? No, everybody, it's a very complicated question. So I have a daughter. She wants to make her driver's license. She's 19, and I question that. I say, do you really? I mean, why do you want this? And then she said, well, I want to help you when you're old, and my grandparents, and drive you around, because she's only riding her bike actually.
Sure.
So we are still negotiating on that. But I think in the future. I'm totally with Tanguy. So we need to make cycling as accessible as possible. So hopefully there will not be a need for a license. Today in Europe or in Germany, I know, so you have to pay like 4,000 euros to do your driver's license. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So we don't want anything like that, I think, for cycling. So maybe we keep that for automotive and driver's license, and that will, keep some people from getting a driver's license. So a mobility license of some sort, or education, so that people can use all the options they have, or shared mobility, whether that's a shared car, autonomous car. I mean, they have to know how to use things, and that's it.
Okay. Well, so on behalf of innovation, on behalf of capital, on behalf of entrepreneurship, on behalf of cities, I think the entire world looks to Europe to lead. And we appreciate everything you do. So thank you so much for the discussion. Please join me in thanking the panel.
Thank you.